just an audio recording. I'm not like secretly camera-ing people. That would be weird. Okay, cool. Welcome back to Interp. All right, our ranks have thinned just a little bit, so I did my best to scare a few people off. Looks like it worked. So we have a couple of things to go through, like just basic announcements-wise first, and then let's get into the meat and potatoes. We'll talk a lot about these, but that was a metaphor. I'm not actually encouraging beef consumption, but potatoes are pretty good no matter how you slice them. Okay. First things first, Summer Camp 2026 info meeting. If you are planning on coming on summer camp, you want to, in the summer, you want to be at that meeting. It'll be sometime this first week of February coming up. And we'll have some clarity on sort of where the West camp is going, where the East camp is going, how everybody's going to be doing the same thing no matter where you go. So all specializations, all majors are welcome on either one of those trips. They are equivalent and even spend most of the first week together physically doing the same thing. So that's on your radar, and you guys will sign up for summer camp. If you want to go on a particular camp, you want to be at the front of the line, register as fast as you can. Sometimes it does fill up now that we've switched over to both camps doing exactly the same stuff. Okay, cool. Tentative westward goal is the Taos, New Mexico area, northern New Mexico, and all the interesting forestry stuff going on in Colorado, Mexico. We probably won't swing north to Utah area or Arizona, but yeah, we're gonna go, and we're gonna go pretty hard westward. Eastward goes to Appalachians, Great Smokies, and goes for the more sort of eastern deciduous regime there. Okay, cool. Second conclave meeting tonight. Not conclave, but like training. Let's learn how to caber toss and cut things without cutting ourselves, and so on and so forth, in this room at 6 p.m. Are there any other like student activities or clubs that we want to get some visibility onto? If you're into shooting sports like target shooting, competitive stuff like that, Ruffner's been the advisor for the shooting sports team, or shooting sports club. There's a flyer on the big board over there if you guys are interested in that. Also, I'm sure Forestry Club and SAF and all that stuff are doing their thing all semester long too, so keep an eye out for those. Cool. More connection is more gooder. So that's it for our announcements. Let's talk about interpretation. First thing I want you to do is, if you don't have one, I have an extra for you. Pull out that note card. I would like for you to do the following. This is not a quiz. There's no wrong answers except for if you forget how to spell your name. Everybody's good? All right. First line, first and last name. Go ahead and pull out your note card if you got it. Otherwise, I have extras for you if you need. First line, first and last name. Second line. What is the geonym, the place name, the location, where you last felt something that really affected you? Like, you would come away from whatever that experience was, wherever that experience was, whomever it was with, etc., that had you shooketh deep in your soul. That your cold, dead, shriveled heart actually thawed and softened for a minute. Like, where were you when this happened? Trust me here, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. I'm not going to embarrass anybody. I want you to think of where that was. Okay? after you've labeled where that experience happened, be it a profound spiritual or intellectual or emotional or physically intense thing that happened, that you felt, you really felt it. Next line, write what year that was. For me, by way of example, the place name is Acadia National Park, Cadillac Mountain, Blueberry Hill, Side Slope Vista Site. The year was 2008, when you guys were little children. Okay? Next line. And you'll be able to just scribble this out if you don't want me or anybody else reading it. I'm gonna collect these so I can give you credit for them, but I don't need to know your personal business. Write down just one sentence, even just a phrase of what happened at that spot. For me, on Blue Hill Overlook, atop Cadillac Mountain, the highest peak on the eastern seaboard in all of North America, and the place where the sun's rays hit first for about 6 weeks in the summer before anywhere else in the Western Hemisphere, I had an intense experience. And that experience was, this lady I'm with, man, she is ruining me for everybody else. I think I might marry this lady. It was a pretty serious moment. Again, I'm not looking for the whole story, and you'll be able to scratch out anything you're not comfortable with me or anybody else seeing. But take a moment to think back to the experience of that moment, whatever that was. Something that really felt like kind of an inner earthquake, maybe, if we can use another metaphor. An earthquake in your guts would be massive internal trauma. Metaphor. All right, everybody got where you were, when it was, and what made it so intense? Okay. Next line. Identify precisely where you were 67 days before that at noon, and what were you doing? Precisely. If you can. If you can't remember what that was, where that was, and what you were doing exactly that interval before, say, or write, can't remember. That's fine. Not a quiz. Exactly 6-7 days before. Sorry. That was tasteless. I apologize. 14-year-old brain rot infects the internet. Exactly where you were and exactly what you were doing at 12 noon, 67 days prior. Everybody mostly good? Okay. For me, I have no idea what I was doing 67 days before that amazing sunset on Cadillac Mountain with the lady I love at noon. I have no idea. I can probably guess, but I'm probably gonna be wrong. Okay, any volunteers? Where were you? What happened? If you're comfortable sharing, no pressure if not.
So where I was I was at Touch of Nature, so Giant City area, mid-spring 2025, so last year. And it was me coming to the realization that outdoor ed and interpretation was absolutely what I wanted to do with my life. And 67 days beforehand at noon, I was probably driving to class at Touch of Nature.
But are you sure?
Like 85% sure.
That's better than a coin toss. We'll take it. Send it. Okay. So that's a pretty big moment. Like figuring out, okay, this is where I want to pour my effort and attention into. This is the track I'm taking, at least for now, right? Maybe something changes later, and that's fine. That's normal. But to get that clarity, how did that feel?
Pretty exciting, knowing that I was on the right track. That I was absolutely certain. It was pretty exciting, pretty relieving as well.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Anybody else? No pressure if not. Okay. Show of hands. How many of you guys and gals were not real sure what was going on at precisely 12 noon, 67 days before this important event in your life, whatever that was? Anybody not sure, like me? Every hand in the room. Now that's remarkable because your brain doesn't turn off. It never stops recording. And how many of you guys remember not just where you were, but you know exactly where you were? Like I remember the 2x2 meter section of that mountain where that experience happened. Anybody else? Yeah, okay. So if our brain is always on, always recording, about 105 megapixels of visual information, 30 times a second, approximately, and also ears and touch and your sense of taste and smell, and other senses we'll talk about this semester, like your sense of proprioception, like what do I need to do musculoskeletally to swing my leg or swing a bat or climb into my high bed truck or whatever. We have lots of senses beyond sort of those basic five. And your brain is constantly processing all of them. You can't turn it off. You can't stop seeing even if you close your eyes. Does that make sense? Okay. And technically speaking, you don't stop seeing even when you're asleep. It's just that your brain switches modes from memory formation to memory consolidation. So taking things from working memory and putting them in long-term storage and archiving them down, pulling out and deciding what details aren't important. Details like, where were you 67 days before some foundational life event, a serious moment in your life? 67 days before, it doesn't matter. Like if you're driving to class, that's not important to remember in specific. So your brain doesn't. It discards a lot of that stuff, almost all of it. And it starts discarding very quickly, within a matter of minutes. Your brain is trying to decide what to hang on to and what to get rid of. So, we have this sort of recorded notion that we have not just sensory inputs and memory storage, we have processing of those sensory inputs. Your brain assigns meaning to things. Your brain can't not assign meaning to what your senses are perceiving. Anybody ever heard a car backfire? It's less common now with non-carbureted engines. Everything's all fuel injected now or electric. But back in the day, when there were a lot more carbureted cars, ever hear a car backfire and think, ooh, that was a gunshot? Anybody? Okay. That process is called attribution. It's your brain hearing just some raw sound. It's just physiological data getting converted into electrical signals for processing in your brain. And it is your brain trying to figure out, okay, that sounded like a gunshot. Do I need to dump a bunch of adrenaline into my bloodstream and go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn survival mode? Like lizard hindbrain survival mode? Shuts off all fine motor control, pulls a bunch of your blood into your core. Your auditory system can actually shut down and stop hearing temporarily when something very scary happens. Your brain is trying to figure out what to do based on the inputs, constantly, all the time. Okay? And this is important for us in forestry, specifically in environmental interpretation, cultural and historic interpretation, because not all sensory inputs, not all experiences, not all memories are created equal. How many of you to this day, whatever you wrote down on your cards, you feel very strongly about it even now? Even if that event was years ago. Okay? Yeah, me too. I'm still in love with that lady. Man, I married up. So cool. She got 2 PhDs, or 2 doctoral degrees. Amazing. Veterinarian and neuroscientist. Wow. Find you somebody that blows your mind. Anyway, not all experiences are equal, not all memories are equal. And the way that we figure out, or our brains figure out, what to keep and hang on to, and which memories to store as memories so centrally important to you that they can change your pulse years later, your blood pressure years later when you have that memory. Now, sometimes the system misfires a little bit. Anybody ever, been at the airport and the gate attendant, waving people onto the plane is like, have a nice flight. And you're like, thanks, you too. Oh, that was dumb. And then years later, you'd be in the shower or walking into class and you just get a full body cringe of, man, I can't believe I said, yeah, you too, to somebody who said, have a nice flight. She clearly was not going to fly that day. Anybody ever had a kind of a cringe recall moment like that? Okay, that's your brain trying furiously to figure out what's important to store in a powerfully physically and mentally and emotionally affective way, and what to discard. And the overwhelming majority of stuff is discarded. I bet nobody remembers verbatim the first sentence I said to you at the beginning of this class. Memory discarding starts to happen within minutes, okay? So, all of that to say, this whole exercise is all about the reason for interpretation. And that reason is simply what actually matters. And we might rephrase that question and ask exactly the same thing by asking, what's valuable to you or me or whomever? Most of you guys and gals have never met my wife, and you may never meet my wife. She's not important to you. She's an NPC in your life, but she's the main character in mine. Environmental, historic, and cultural interpretation is about identifying what matters. Not for you and me personally, not individually, but what matters for all of us together as a whole, as Americans, is one useful grouping label. As Gen Z people is another useful grouping label. As, well, most of us are, as far as I know, they could be lizard people. Most of you guys, I'm assuming, are human. It's not fair for me to assume your species or your pronouns, but I'm guessing that most of us in this classroom are human, even if you don't really feel like it today. Like everybody has up days nowadays. Okay? So Interp is all about professionally, as your job, figuring out what matters enough to convene other people and experience it, or talk about it, learn about it. But not just talk and learn and experience, build meaningful understanding and connection with that topic, that subject, that phenomenon, that historical event, that historical figure, that living culture that is still around now. And we may not know enough about it yet to value it in a way that you'll remember years later, in a way that is on the level of an experience that brings clarity about what your professional life is going to be like for the next decade, or maybe the entire rest of your life. That's a hard thing to do. And this is a forestry class. Where are the trees, Dr. Park? Come on. So, this list of what matters, this is going to be our topics for the semester. Okay? And this guy named Freeman Tilden, we'll talk about the history of interpretation and who Freeman Tilden was and why we should care about an old dead white guy. But Freeman Tilden, the short version, is that he wrote the short, elegant, doesn't read like a textbook, wrote the first handbook for American interpretive rangers. It was the first book of its kind anywhere in the world, anywhere in the history of the world as far as we can figure, at least recorded history. And it was all about, hey guys, a lot of you who are, at that time, in the mid-20th century, like 70, 80 years ago, when he was active in this stuff, a lot of you guys and gals who are wanting to be park rangers or foresters, natural resource managers. We get the first wildlife ecologists and biologists around this time. Aldo Leopold, you may have heard of him, right? All around the same time. And while science is advancing rapidly, and in the next couple of decades after Freeman Tilden is working on this stuff, we're going to get things like nuclear weapons. We're going to get things like microwaves. We're going to get things like hydrophobic performance fishing gear or Under Armour or whatever technical clothes. All that stuff is after this. This came around in a period of change in human history, not just American history, but human history, of extremely rapid technological advancement, the first major global financial depression starting in 1929, and a lot of discombobulation. People were feeling like their jimmies were pretty rustled by the rate of change. Things were happening then almost as fast as they're happening now, okay? And so alongside the technological advancement, we have people going, wait, this is going faster than society can keep up. We have to have some conversations about what matters. Otherwise, our technology is going to be running us, not the other way around. That's not good. This is at the tail end of the time when clear-cut resource extraction forestry is kind of winding down by this point because it's already cut over the entire continental United States, pretty much. Okay? For the first time or the second or third time in some eastern places, third or fourth. Okay? And people by the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, we now have species that are observably extinct because we extincted them. The prevailing guess up until kind of the late 1800s, early 1900s was Humanity isn't even capable of doing that. And then we did it. We almost did it with the American bison, right? Buffalo. We certainly did it with pigeons to feed places like Chicago. Tens of billions of birds all shot pretty quickly so we could have our chicken nuggies with honey mustard sauce. Well, they weren't chicken nuggets, they were pigeon nuggets. Actually, they were just pigeons. Nuggets were an invention of post-World War II food technology. Stay with me. All right. So this class is going to be all about cutting out bullshit. It's about knowing a textbook full of facts about forests and specific tree species and ecosystems, or maybe for those of you who are on the human side of forestry more than the resource extraction or management side, a culture that you're fascinated with, there are a million facts about all of these things. There are now more scientific studies being published in fields like forestry and human medicine and other research areas. The publication rate is faster than a physical human can read them. Our ability to produce information, to produce knowledge through science, and now to produce AI slop, has already outstripped humans. You literally can't be a completely read expert on anything anymore. There's too much, and it's being generated too fast for you to do that. Even if you could, who would want to read 24 hours a day with your eyes taped open? Just, yikes. Okay? So, because there is more coming out of that fire hose, metaphorically speaking, there are no fire hoses in the room at this time. Because there's more coming out of that fire hose than any person can even consume, much less make sense of, apply, utilize, put to the benefit of themselves and to society, we have to revisit this question. What matters? Because everything else is slop. If, let's say you have a particular kind of cancer, and there's been a research study that has identified how to cure that cancer without killing the patient. But the doctors can't keep up with that rate of publication because they're busy treating people and sleeping and eating and showering and making babies and streaming on Twitch. Oof. Anyway, you're in trouble if you're that cancer patient. Does that make sense? Okay. So, interpretation is fundamentally about asking the question and answering the question of what matters, what has value, what's important to people versus just informative to people. So, I've been talking for about a half an hour now. We're going to take a break in a couple of minutes here just to stretch and move our bodies and stuff like that. But what we got to wrestle with is your education up to this point, like almost 20 years of nonstop education up to this point, is training you away from this. How many species did you have to memorize for tree ID? How many? Just ballpark. 135? Okay. Which ones of those 135 matter? All of them? The ones you still remember. Why do you remember those?
See them a lot, and some of them have easier names to remember.
Sure. Yeah. Some of them have utilitarian value. They help you do something a little bit easier, cheaper, safer, faster, more pleasantly, whatever. Make fat stacks. We gotta eat. Okay? So even if you're not really thinking about it, you are curating out of that, don't tell Schoonover, but you're curating out of that list of over 100 species to identify which ones do I need for the quiz, and which ones do I need as a forester in Southern Illinois, or wherever you want to work and do your stuff, okay? So we're doing this anyway. We might as well bring this process to the fore and make it explicit instead of subconscious. And that is what interpretation as a profession helps scaffold you to do. Helps you to unlearn the information transfer mode that school from kindergarten up through college, right into grad school, if you guys decide to go to that. If that's useful for you. That's about training you to ingest a lot of facts and then regurgitate those facts, metaphorically speaking. Please don't vomit during quizzes and tests. Spit that stuff back up. And maybe you remember it afterwards, maybe not. But you got that A, right? This class is going to be unlearning some very, very deeply ingrained habits. And that's okay. That's a good thing. It's not easy necessarily, it's not automatic, but it is profoundly good. This is a question between the forester who can rattle off Latin names versus the one who can look at the tree, be aware of its species, and identify the specific branch that is the hazard branch that might kill several campers in the designated campsite underneath that tree. Knowledge versus importance. Data, facts versus meaning. Okay? Cool. So, again, if you're looking at me like, oh God, what is this class getting me into? That's normal for this stage. It's cool. I get to be your companion, your guide on unlearning how to learn facts and learning things like how to interpret those facts for the value that they might represent to you and to other people. And how to communicate that value, that opportunity, that invitation to figure out what matters instead of getting clobbered like everybody else with a whole bunch of data and facts and AI slop and the endless feed of TikTok videos and so on and so forth, right? Has anybody ever in the history of humankind woken up and leapt out of bed going, thank God for TikTok. My life is awesome now because of this. But some of us spend a lot of time on TikTok or Reddit or Instagram or Snapchat or streaming Doctor Who marathons or whatever. Okay? It's not a question of getting enough. It's a question of, does any of it matter? All right, let's take a quick break. Go ahead and stretch your legs, get some water, recharge the glucolytic electrical organ that is your brain. It runs on water and sugar and is 45% cholesterol by dry mass. Did you know your brain is mostly cholesterol? You don't have to memorize that. That's not an important fact. How you doing, Kaylee? Good to see you. All right.
the stairs is like a person, and it's his little horse. So you swing the get it for free. They just let you in, and then there's the hall, and then there's like the fence, I think, but I've never gone there. My most girl. Yeah. I think they're on the idea of starting like a cosplay competition, but like, last year I kind of put together a classic cosplay for maybe this year, actually. It is ridiculous. I actually have to like run in a wobble, and I do not have the space for that. I would fall. I can't see without these. I need these to sit. Haley, you're blurry. Yes. I mean, I can't. You can try. I need the glasses. I can't read it anything about them.
All right, let's get back after it. So, come on back around. Let's go. Now you're good. Okay. Hey, that's what we do. All right, so in 1916, the United States Congress, in its wisdom, passed what's called an Organic Act, which is just like a utility way to get a bunch of boring government business done. There are lots of organic acts. But in 1916, there was an Organic Act for the United States National Park Service to be created from nothing. And a couple of our other classes, we talk about how in the 17 and 1800s, people just kind of did whatever they wanted with the natural resources of what are now the United States. But by 1903, 04, 05, and when John Muir is setting up the Sierra Club to put the idea of national parks into the national awareness of like 100 million people as a new experiment, one that had never really been tried before, got some traction. And while John Muir died in sort of a very sad defeat of over Hetch Hetchy Valley being dammed up and functionally destroyed for the utilitarian use of fire suppression in places like San Francisco and for irrigation and stuff like that, he won. So he lost that battle. He won the war, metaphorically. There's not actual war fighting happening over the Park Service. Not yet, but stay tuned. Anyway, and Congress heard the will of the people. John Muir and a lot of folks like him who were introduced to the idea through the foundation of the Sierra Club, an environmental organization, and like organizations like the Audubon Society, in not jamming a bunch of factoids about Yellowstone and Yosemite and Rocky Mountain National Park and a few other parks that existed by that time. We had national parks before we had a National Park Service. So it was just kind of chaos and anarchy and trying to get those managed and protected. People saw the value of that idea and saw it to the tune of tens of millions of people up through the 1960s and 70s, so up to about 50 years ago. Environmental conservation, environmental protection was a totally bipartisan, slam dunk kind of an effort. And things have changed since then. right? Political parties have become more divided and polarized and all of that stuff. And now natural protected areas are a bit of a contentious point these days. But back then, there was a clear and mostly unified sense of, let's set some of this stuff apart. Let's take places like Yellowstone out of economic production. No logging there, no mining. In fact, there's a bunch of hundreds of old pit and shaft mines for silver inside the current perimeter of Rocky Mountain National Park. A couple of hundred of them. So don't ever go walking off trail at Rocky Mountain National Park unless you know exactly what you're doing and where you're going, because people occasionally fall down those and nobody's going to find you down there. True story. But there was a sense of, okay, as a country, we can compute with pretty darn good accuracy in 20th century forestry, 1900s era forestry, Gifford Pinchot and Forest Service and all that stuff, pretty much exactly how many board feet of timber we can get by species in a steady state management rotation kind of a way. Like it's big numbers, but it's finite math, and it's kind of boring and laborious to compile all those numbers. But, we got to build houses. We got to provide board feet of timber, dimensional lumber in various useful and economically fast enough growing species to build houses and to provide railroad ties to move material around and people around and so on and so forth. That's important. We can't have a conversation, a meaningful, value-based conversation on the importance of like national parks and stuff like that, and how we should all be getting the benefits of national parks and so forth, if we don't have enough board feet of timber for houses and railroad ties and so on and so forth. But we pretty well checked that box, or had started to make serious efforts with modern silviculture by that time. So that frees us up as a society to say, okay, we've got the basic home building and road paving and mining operations basically figured out good enough. In the first half of the 20th century, resources are not scarce in the United States. And then following World War II, we're kind of the only major world power that hasn't been bombed back to the Stone Age, and the United States is doing kind of fine, thank you very much. So we're having this conversation as a country in that time about what matters beyond the mines and well-ordered silvicultural production forestry. And crucially, the surplus wealth that your grandparents and great-grandparents were generating and enjoying. As a society, is it valuable for us to have parks? So Interp is not just leading folks on hikes. It's also national conversations about what's important to us as 340 million people. There's a lot in the news right now. A lot of pretty strong opinions and horrified takes on what's going on in the news right now. And it's important that we have that conversation. So Interp is very much about being very clear on the facts. The information, the data, the truth, the capital T, of the object reality. There is a true specific number of how many board feet of timber the United States can produce for home building and so forth. And we have pretty darn good estimates. It's not exactly perfectly the right number. We don't care what the exactly perfectly right number is. We just got to know that we got enough. Okay? So, facts, info, data, truth. Into Interp. To the value, importance, and the ethic. Write down in your notes that an ethic is a system of thinking or a system of understanding by which to understand if a thing, an act, an event, a behavior, a decision, whatever, all the stuff we do as people, if it is good. It's a way to figure out the value, the moral value, the good or badness, the evil or goodness of something systematically based on raw, dispassionate inputs, right? There's a saying in popular culture right now, the facts don't care about your feelings. We are thinking creatures. But the idea that we are personifying facts can't care about anything. They're not reasoning things, they're facts. They're not thinking brains or organisms. Okay? So we're gonna live kind of in the middle this semester. The Interp of connecting folks to the value and importance, the meaning, the goodness or badness, goodness or evilness of the info around a Civil War battle, or the info around a particular favorite tree species that you did want to remember out of tree ID, not one that you didn't, or what have you. Okay? So, here in a sec, I want you to scratch out anything you don't want me to be able to read on those note cards, and we'll pass those forward so I can give you credit for that thinking exercise. And we're now going to take out our own sheet of paper, and we're going to start a list. So blank Word document if you're using a laptop, or your notes app on your phone if that's how you do notes and in-class exercises, or good old paper and pencil. This is a forestry program, so use lots of paper as job security. We're just going to make a list. We're actually going to kind of reverse engineer this little flow chart on the board. This semester, you get to choose what's important to you individually as a student in this class. What are you passionate about? Maybe it's Interp as a thing, so you might be interpreting interpretation to your classmates this semester. Maybe you're a total otaku weeb. You're a big-time anime fan of Japanese-style animation, and you just can't get enough of it, and all of your friends are kind of in that eye roll phase, like they've had enough. They don't want you to introduce them anymore because Akira was nice and all, but my God, One Piece? Ooh, friends don't let friends. Anyway. Or whatever else. Whittling. Wood carving. Fiber arts, more broadly. Crocheting. Dirt biking. Hogging. Anybody know what hogging is? What's hogging?
Form of fishing, right?
You're goddamn right it is. It is a form of fishing. That is the most dispassionate, neutral way of... Let's be real, guys. What is hogging really? Like, describe it like what it actually is.
So my grandfather and father used to do it, and they basically just get in the water and you find like where like most, I think it's mostly just like catfish.
Yes, sir.
Kind of bed, and you just stick your hand down there, and they think it's something that they need to eat, and whenever they bite your arm, you pull them out. I heard this.
Noodling and hogging are the same thing, yeah. There's a guy named Mark over at University of Missouri who did a long-term research study on hogging. And like that was his job, y'all. He got paid to research hand fishing catfish. and meeting all kinds of people like you do in the hogging culture. Is culture the right word? I don't know. Fandom is not the right word for hogging. Anyway. But the point here is, you know what you're interested in. You know what you're passionate about. You know what you care about because it's important to you. For me, it is shaping our future a little bit through you guys and gals. Not aiming you in a particular direction, but equipping you in whatever direction you choose to go far and to go fast. Okay? So I would interpret something like that for the purposes of this class. So this list that you're starting is a list of topics. 1, 2, 3 word phrases, just identifying whatever it is for you that you find when Dr. Park is just waxing on and on and on about values and timber extraction. And like, where does your mind go when I start talking? Put that on the list. That's something that's important to you. See if you can get 3, 4, 5 things in any order. It doesn't have to be like number 1 is the most important to me. It could be a hobby. It could be your dog. I have 2 dogs. One of them is named Acadia Blueberry for the national park where my wife and I fell in love. Right? You heard that story a little bit. The other one is named Katahdin Maple. And she's our little gymnast. She is named for the mountain peak, Mount Katahdin in central Maine, which is the northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail, which I got to hike after I graduated college, summer of 2004. So the names of my pets reflect important things to me. If you have any pets, what did you name them? Why did you name them that? Maybe it's a sick reference to that show or series or movie that, like, it's your guilty pleasure. When you got the flu, you might watch it 2 or 3 times in a week, and you already know every line in it by heart, but that's the point. You're not looking to be surprised, you're looking to be comforted by something familiar. Put that movie on the list. Whatever. This list is personal to you. And it's gonna be a little bit different for everybody. Now, the one thing I'm not asking you to put on this list is anything that you think I think is important. Don't put maple species on your list of stuff that's important to you, because I named my dog Maple. She's such a sweetie too. Maybe I'll bring her in sometime. I don't want you to care about what I care about, okay? That's important. Don't tell me something you think I'm gonna like, because that's gonna make for a kind of a cringy semester for you, okay? I got plenty of forestry topics. This is my job. So don't worry about that, all right? Take a minute, reflect. Look through what you've got so far and ask yourself, is there anything else? If there's a topic that you are willing to sacrifice your social standing to be right on that topic, that's probably pretty important to you. Like, if there's anything that you are just ready to debate at a moment's notice and like actually somebody into walking away, yeah, that's important to you, okay? Whatever that might be. All right, how many things you guys got so far? Anybody got 3 or more? Decent, okay. Anybody got 5 or more? Excellent. 10 or more? Okay, cool. Awesome. Throughout the semester, there are gonna be a whole bunch of assignments to put together some kind of interpretive experience or materials, like we saw on Monday, a comic book or the Junior Ranger guidebook, or like an actual like nature guide kind of thing, an Audubon guide to birds, whatever. That's interpretive, as well as educational. And I want you to go to this list and pick stuff off of this list that you're passionate about, that you're interested in. Not, again, oaks or hickories or maples or kudzu or bamboo or climate change, if that's not something that you care about. It's something that I care about, but my opinions don't matter for you. Cool? All right. So one of our contracts with each other for this semester is I'm going to try never to ask you to work hard on something that you don't care about. If interpretation is all about the stuff that is central to our lives, these topics are part, many people feel, of what define you as an individual. What makes you you? Part of that is how much you are into these things, these ideas, these philosophies. It doesn't have to be a physical object. It can be a mindset even. All right? Cool. Whatever that list is for you, rock and roll. You do you. What we are going to do is look for ways in which not necessarily that specific topic, not my dog, but canines in more broad applicability and accessibility to everybody else, what canine human companionship and relationship over the last, 10, 15, 20,000 years means for us. Why is that important? Why am I just arrested when Acadia sits and looks up with me with his pupils dilated, ready for feeding? He's ready. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing because I'm distracted now, you know? We'll get into generalizing, expanding beyond the thing that's important to you by interrogating why is it important to you and how is that why accessible to anybody else. So if you're a history buff, one guy one year was a Civil War reenactment nerd. Like he had the actual, it's not a costume, it's the actual legit period wool, in his case Union uniform and the little cap. And he was saving up to get like the actual, Minet ball. I guess that was the first rifle.
This guy's named Peter Fox.
Huh?
Was that Peter Fox?
How do you know Peter?
I worked with him.
Oh yeah.
I asked him apartments. When you said Civil War reenactor, I was like, it's gotta be this guy.
Yeah.
He went through Trinity several times as well. I know him with
All right.
I knew him.
Very cool. He's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy. He does everything.
Is he still doing the mascot stuff?
I was literally just about to say, he's the mascot ringleader as well.
Speaking of Peter Fox specifically and mascots in this class, Valentine's Day is gonna happen during this semester. And something you guys need to know and be prepared for is that my wife likes to put me on the spot during class for some kind of Valentine's Day surprise. We do things for the people, for the ideas, for the creatures that we are passionate about. And that is one way that she expresses her love for me. So whatever happens that week, I can't be responsible for, all right? It's involved a glee club. It's involved Peter as a mascot. He was,
Peter Fox your wife?
I think he was Gray Dog. She had him come in, and there was a barbershop quartet one year. One year, the glee club sang Teenage Dream to me in front of Intro to Forest Rec. Right? Okay, look at your faces right now. You guys are smiling. Why are you smiling? Real question, for the purposes of this class. Why are you smiling? I'm geeking out on my wife. You guys mostly have not met her before.
Some of us know him, and some people are imagining who his character could possibly be.
Yeah.
I know more about it probably than most of y'all did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Pete alright. He's hooked us up a bunch of times with mascot stuff. So.
Yeah. He's a nice guy.
Yeah. But why were you guys smiling when we were talking about this in this way? Anybody? Serious question.
Funny, I'm like, embarrassed or
It's
something
cute.
Like that. Like,
to
I
imagine
think
that.
if you're like extrovert like that, like
Mhm.
it's, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm a super duper introvert, which is part of the point. Like, one year she had to stop them and ask, "Are you okay? Your face is really red." I'm like, "No, I don't even have the word for it." Okay? That's so cute. But my story doesn't really matter to you guys. Some of you are in the process of even talking about and hearing about the men's glee club in 166 in a whole bunch of really tight clothes. Like the whole glee, I don't know if this is their uniform, but it was super surprising and unexpected. Anyway, as I start talking about that stuff, some of you are not trying to imagine that as it happened to me. You're imagining the face of somebody that's special to you, and maybe remembering sometime they surprised you on Valentine's Day or asking you to homecoming in high school or whatever it is, right? So the key thing that takes our Interp beyond what's important to us personally as the interpreter, as the interpretive ranger, or the cave tour guide, as we'll see on our field trip or whatever, is identifying what am I passionate about? Why am I passionate about that? And that underlying reason is probably a reason that's common to all people. We all understand love, even if you can't conceive of the idea of a men's glee club singing Katy Perry's Teenage Dream with dancing in front of my class in like the middle of the class. It wasn't even like classes over. They were like, "Are you Logan Park?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like marching into the beat and a cappella Teenage Dream, right? That's hard to visualize. But that awkwardness, maybe some of you see it as romantic, maybe some of you don't, that's fine, whatever. But that sense of, or that aversion to awkwardness is common to all of us. Yeah? Cool. So, we identify what's underlying the why, driving the value, driving the importance, ascribing goodness in the ethical evaluation of it, and map that out to what's common to everybody, and then connect all of our people who've maybe never been to Mammoth Cave before, if we're interpreting it Mammoth, and taking it from a bunch of cave ecology textbook blurbs that nobody's excited about. It might be intellectually interesting, but it's not going to change anybody's life, to identifying what's the human experience attached to these caves. What was it like to be? What did it smell like? What was the temperature and humidity like for people 3, 4, 5, 6,000 years ago exploring the Mammoth Cave system with reed torches and not even ladders? They found torches miles back into the cave. Miles and miles back. Can you imagine doing that? And the highest level of technology you have is a flint-knapped knife? That's burly as heck. And to the extent that anybody's nodding about that, we can connect with the idea of, man, that's pretty burly. We can't necessarily connect with the specific lived experience of Paleo-Americans, but whatever, you know? So we're looking for that connection. What's the underlying connection? And we're structuring the experience to make that clear and accessible and welcoming and inviting to everybody. So the thing is, on our cave tours, it's not going to be, hey, I'm going to sit you guys down in a big room in the cave and spit cave facts at you for an hour, and then we're going to go back out and we're never going to see each other again. It's, let me invite you on this subterranean adventure, and you might learn something about yourself and something about the cave. That's getting into values more than just a bunch of cold, dry factoids and stuff. Okay, so to start wrapping this particular line of inquiry up, the way that we sort of put a topic in front of people and start to set it up so that it is accessible because it's leaning on the common value underlying why it's interesting or important or you're passionate about it, whatever. The way that we sort of stage all this and set it up so that people can get into it is by transforming the topic into a theme. A theme is going to be typically your opening line. On interpretive science, it's going to be like the title. It's one sentence long. It's got to accomplish a bunch of specific things. So, a little bit further down on that sheet of paper, which has your list of personal topics interesting and important to you, I want you to write the following list. These are the requirements for this class. In the professional world, these are guidelines. They are rules to be broken once you're ready to do this professionally. But for this class, each one of these is a requirement. And it's a requirement to help you simplify the process of taking something that you care about, turning it into honest-to-God interp. Okay? First, it's a complete sentence. It's a sentence with a subject and a predicate. The predicate is the verby part of the sentence where the subject is doing something, it's having something, it's being something, or it's receiving something, it's being affected by something else. Okay? Rule number 1 for theme statements, or taking your list of topics and turning them into themes, one sentence per theme. First, it's a subject and predicate complete sentence. Second rule, the verb in your one sentence predicate is an action verb. Meaning it is not a passive voice verb. It's not a statement of fact verb. It is almost every verb in the English language. We have thousands of them. Except for these. Be, am, is, are, was, were, been, have, has, had, do, does, did, can, could, will, would, shall, which nobody uses much anymore except in legal context, should, may, might, must. Be, am, is, are, was, were, been, have, has, had, do, does, did, can, could, will, would, shall, should, may, might, or must. These are passive voice verbs, and we're not going to go to English 101 class. These are the boring verbs. These are the textbook verbs. These are not the storytelling verbs. They're not the action verbs. They're not the something happening in an exciting way or surprising way verbs. For example, a fact about oaks is going to use is, are, was, were, been, be, or am. Oaks are hardwoods. That's a fact, and it's boring as hell. I'm putting myself to sleep, and I'm standing up in front of a room full of people. Don't list a bunch of facts, or even one fact. Don't use a passive voice factoid verb in your theme statement, okay? Next rule, rule number 3. Rule 3 is that your theme statement needs to have clear or implied punctuation, like a period or a question mark a question is a wonderful, powerful theme, way to kick off Interp. Because a statement is one and done. A question invites an answer. Maybe the interpretive experience over the next hour in the cave or whatever is to find some answers, plural, because there's rarely as few as one answer for interpretive important questions. Pines, or Pinus strobus, is the Latin name for who cares. It's a factoid. Right? The moment we're done saying it, we're both going to start forgetting it. Yeah? Okay. So, facts are important for passing most of your classes. Facts are a trap because we can't stay with a fact. Now, we can't disregard facts. We're not making anything up in interpretation. Not at all. We are starting on the firm foundation of real, true, correct facts, information, data, truth. Okay? But we don't stay there. This is not environmental education like we talked about on Monday. This is environmental interpretation. We're getting to the value that drives us into interest about these things. All right, so rule 3 is it's got to be punctuated. Rule 4 is it has to express a perspective. It is not a statement of fact. And our next rule is direct from Freeman Tilden, the godfather of environmental interpretation the world over. It has to provoke in some way. So on Wednesday of next week, because we don't have class on Monday, we're going to pick it up with, what is a list of emotions that you and I are explicitly trying to provoke in our participants to kick off the interpretation? Fear, surprise, anger. Fiero is an emotion. Most folks have not heard of Fiero before. How many of you guys are familiar with Dragon Ball Z? Okay. Fiero is the Kamehameha power level over 9,000. That's impossible. The scouter must be broken, right? It's the, oh my God, my favorite guy on my favorite team of sports ball just hit a grand slam touchdown and it's a hat trick. Awesome. Yes, that's Fiero, okay? You think you could write one sentence that could provoke people towards a Fiero sensation? And that's just the start of the Interp? That's where we're going this semester. All right, cool. And we'll see you guys next time. Scratch out anything you don't want me to see on your note card. That's fine. And send it on up. We'll see you in a week. A whole week. I don't know what I'm going to do in the meantime. Probably comfort myself in my loneliness with my wife and my 2 awesome dogs. So very sad, isn't it?